In this video, we're painting a landscape. Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bridget and I'm an artist and art educator. I'm painting on canvas paper, but you can paint on a regular canvas if you like. And we're using acrylic paints. And to start, I've pre-mixed some blues using ultramarine blue and some white, and I've created at least 3 to 4 shades. I've added more white for lighter shades and less white for darker shades. Now I've placed my darkest blue at the top of the page, and it will get gradually lighter as it gets towards the horizon line. And for this, I want you to pay attention especially to how I am blending out the paint. While my darkest blue is still wet, I'm taking my second darkest blue and I'm putting it right next to it and gradually blending it up into it. With a back and forth sweeping motion, I'm gradually moving my way up through the blues just to create that gradient effect. I'm not rotating my brush at all because if I did that, it would become a little bit muddy. And as I'm adding my lighter blues, I'm taking care to move the color straight through the rest of the shades. Using that back and forth sweeping motion, I'm gradually bringing it up the canvas. That way, I'm not going to mix any of the shades together by accident. It's important not to jump between the shades, but instead to bring the paintbrush all the way through each of them. Using a light turquoise, I'm going to paint the water. And while the paint is still wet, I'm taking a little bit of white and doing some short strokes on top of it. And just beneath that for the foreground, I am using some raw umber mixed with white to create sand. And then I'm taking a little bit of white and blending it into the sand itself just to create some highlights. Now, because this is acrylic paint, it dries pretty quickly, so I'm trying my best to work very quickly as well. So that concludes our background layers. And now I can go on top once that first layer is dry. And that way these colors won't mix. I've mixed some hunter's green with some yellow to create a lime green, and with my brush I'm just doing some dabbing to create a bush-like effect or some, wild shrubbery. And I'm just taking that all the way across the sand where the sand meets the water. And now I'm going on top of it with some highlights. And I've made the highlights using that same color mixed with a little bit of white. If you ever want colors to blend, you want to make sure that your paint is still wet, and if you don't want the colors to blend, then you have to make sure that they're dry. So I want these colors to blend with each other, so I'm working while the paint is still wet. And to create the shadows, I have just gone in with a little bit of that pure hunter's green. And for this patch of grass, I'm creating one side a little bit darker than the other side because near that dark side, we're going to put a tree later. And so we're creating that shadow effect in advance. And I'm not being too precise or too careful because it's a little bit further away and less detailed anyway. Looking at my sky, I decided to add some clouds near the very top. So holding my brush horizontal to the canvas paper, I'm just doing some little rolls just to create a sort of natural cloud shape as well as some little dabs. And I've started off with some white, but then to create some shadows for the cloud, I've gone in with a little bit of that ultramarine blue mixed with white again, just to create that shadows underneath. Now, clouds can be a little bit tricky to create. I find that the best way to make them is to have the middle of the cloud be thicker than the two ends. And then I'm just making small little dabs around the clouds to create the illusion that there are clouds farther away in the background. And for the clouds that are far away in the background, I'm using less paint on my brush just to give that see-through effect. So this next part is for those of you who are a little bit bold. With a small square brush, I am creating 3 lines to create a fence. And I encourage you to go a little bit slow as you create these fence lines. Going slowly at first will help you to gain confidence. So once my fence is down, I am creating the tree, starting with the trunk. Using a thin brush and pressing very lightly, I start from the top and then move my way to the bottom, adding pressure as I go down. However, you can always start at the bottom with more pressure and then flick upwards to create that same branch effect. And for the leaves, I'm just doing a bunch of little dabs, and I'm trying to create a very natural effect by layering the different shades of green, using white or yellow to create lighter shades. And you can experiment with the different types of shapes that your brush can make with different types of dabs depending on what way you hold your brush. And now I'm going to go back in and just fortify that fence by adding another layer of white. And this is our finished piece. If you liked this video or learned something, you can give it a like, leave a comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to see more. Thanks for watching.